Hello, hello, hello. Mary Kay Smooth here. How you doing today? It was a lovely weekend, except for the little storm we had, the little raining. But I'm so happy to be out of school, girl. I can't even tell y'all how it feels. I was waiting. This year did go fast though. It did. It was. We went back to school. It was Thanksgiving, Christmas. It didn't start to slow down until Easter, after Easter break, because that's when we didn't have a lot of days off. Um, but everything's going pretty good with the skin, and I'm already cleansed, as you know. Um, but I just, Chantel called me up after last time talking about she didn't know that I knew Tammy Terrell when I was a child. And I guess I owe you all an explanation. Um, if you search Tammy Terrell Unsung full episode, I think it's on Facebook somewhere, the whole episode. If you go to towards the end, like almost like 35, 38 minutes in, you'll see me crying. Um, Growing up, Tammy was a, a special part of my childhood. Growing up, my parents exposed us to a whole bunch, and that was one of the like 3 years of the highlights. But there was some more, and you'll find them out sooner or later, because I'll talk about them. But if you want to see that, it's the Unsung Tammy Terrell episode. I am in there, Dr. Garrett and myself, um, and of course Tammy's sister Ludi. That's who got us to do it, because Dr. Garrett didn't really want to do it. We had such a relationship with her. It is hard in a way. It was hard to share because it was painful that she was so young when she passed away. Because for me, I didn't know. Dr. Garrett did know she was not going to make it, but he didn't tell us. My sister and I don't think he told my parents either, because they didn't act like it either. We all were shocked. We thought that she could get better. They kept operating. We thought that she was going to get better. Um, Such a bright personality type. She could make you feel so special. Um, Everybody had a different thing with her. For me, I was her little girl. Plus, she used to get people to do, like I said, special things when we couldn't go places. She would have her friends call us while they were out. Her and my parents and and other friends, Dr. Garrett and some others, while they were out, we would be home. So she would have people call us and give us surprise calls and stuff. Um, and my birthday, fourth grade, I'll never forget that, when the limo came and Tammy came with Dr. Garrett and a cake and Crater Records. She signed a single of Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing for everybody. And then the kids in the neighborhood came in Springfield, where we lived at that time, because you got to understand, in part of suburban Union County, which is like Springfield, Morris. Well, Morris is Morristown. And of course, that's a big part of it. But in suburban Union County, wherever George Washington was, there was slaves. And when slavery was over, they allowed blacks to live in certain pockets of the towns of Summit, of Madison, of Chatham. And Morristown, of course, because his headquarters was there, had a larger amount of people, black people. And in Springfield, it's called the Square. In Springfield was a lot of farms, Even into the 60s, there were farms. And right now, there's a couple of housing complexes, condos, and things that are built on some of those farms that sold later. And so what they call what's known as the square, it's not 100% black anymore. Actually, it never was. Mr. Davis, there was the Davis family that lived up the street from us, was the only white family that lived in the square. However, Springfield was very progressive, I will say. During the 60s, the temple, one of the temples in Springfield, actually did fundraise for Martin Luther King twice. One of my grandfather's friends, Rabbi Prince, who spoke at March on Washington, I believe he was somewhere in between Mahalia Jackson and Martin Luther King. He spoke. He brought Martin Luther King to Springfield, and the first time it was at the temple, the fundraiser. The second time, because it was so crowded, I believe they had it at our high school, Dayton Regional. But in those towns, in Montclair, in Springfield, Summit, all those towns had areas of town. Of course, it was not the prime part of town, but it was in town. And as I was telling you, Springfield was relatively progressive. Springfield was about 95% Jewish, I would say. But Springfield had something that Newark didn't even have at that time. The houses that were built in the square during like 60, 59, 60, 60, like to 63, were built by a black man named Al Evans. Newark didn't have a black developer at that time in the 60s. That because we moved to Springfield when the year that President Kennedy was assassinated. Oh, that's another story too. Uh, that's another story. I'll tell you all another week. I'm gonna stop laughing about that story, but yes. So I was in the kindergarten when Kennedy was assassinated, and it was sad. I'll say it was sad. It was sad for the whole country. No one in this area, everyone was sad. Um, so I'm gonna go on. But if you want to see the Tammy Terrell episode of Unsung, do a Google search. Oops, I just dropped my. You know what I dropped? The retinol and I had the cream. I didn't drop the cream though. All right. So I'm gonna start mixing it on my hand. I am happy to tell you guys I have put up the videos, the past videos that we've made together on Instagram, because we're on Instagram now, guys. You could go to the hashtags. I have to thank the youngsters for telling me about the hashtags because old girl didn't know a lot about the hashtags. But now I understand, and I'm teaching them about how to cross into several social media platforms at one time. Okay, I got it mixed up now. So I'm just going to keep going while I'm running that mouth. You all know that I run my mouth right. I don't have to tell you that. You know Maria by now. Actually, the people that come on here that do already know me know that I talk. I got that honestly from the fam. Okay, we're moving. But yeah, the Tammy Terrell thing. Hold on, I hit something. Okay, I turned it off. Okay. It was big in my childhood. Now, if you know me, and if you don't, I have I grew up with a in a crazy family. My grandfather, Reverend B.F. Johnson, was the pastor of Metropolitan Baptist Church on Springfield Avenue in Newark. And he came here in the 40s, and that's when Johnson's came to New Jersey. And there's a lot of us here right now, what are left pretty much of my father's family. My father's family really settled here in like, I think like 42. And so my grandfather was all up in the Southern Christian leadership, the Black ministers, the Black Baptist Ministers Convention. He was the mission board president for 20 years after Martin Luther King Sr. was before him, and those were his friends. So when they came here, Black people were Republicans then. And so that's the story about JFK. My sister and I, when he ran, we thought he was the cutest white man we ever saw. And so we wanted to go see him. And my grandfather and them, because Nixon was a Republican, that's who they were going for, my father. So my grandfather was friends with Todd Whitman, Driscoll, Alfred Driscoll, the king of the Parkway, a lot of the governors and stuff, because his church was very big. You know, he was doing 3 sermons on Sundays just at Metropolitan, and sometimes on 3 o'clock he will go and visit other churches. But he had it jam packed, and they were Republicans. So what's funny is that JFK did come to Newark. So you know the little girls was like, "Oh God, he's so cute, Daddy. He's so cute." He was a handsome man. He was a handsome guy. Um, but so my grandfather anchored the Johnson family, and my uncle Robert and my dad. My dad was the number 6 Black teacher to pass the Newark teachers exam, first in science. And so he was the first one in the family, because my family is mostly teachers and preachers on my father's side, the wives and everything. So he was the first one in the family to pass the exam. And it was very difficult because it was written, and then you had to go before a panel of 6 principals that were certified in your area of expertise. So Daddy was science, and that was one of the difficult places. Actually, they all were difficult because they really didn't want a lot of Black people to get in, and there weren't any. In 1951, Daddy was here doing his thing around town for a while, and Artie Johnson, a big basketball player. Dr. Garrett was those were guys that were in his first couple of classes. So Dr. Garrett, of course, is the one that introduced us to Tammy Terrell. But a lot of Newark's premier basketball players and some of the football players and some other sports came through Daddy's school. I could tell you a story about I don't know Butch's Muslim name, but Kenneth Hall, Esquire, the prosecutor from East Orange, was one of Daddy's kids, and he lived catty corner. My grandparents lived next door to Cleveland Elementary, and that's where my father, it wasn't elementary then. When my father started teaching, it was junior high until they built West Kinney Junior High, and then he moved over there. But when I met Kenneth Hall's father with Daddy, and one day we were in the Pathmark before it closed, and Mr. Hall said to me that he told me that they lived catty corner to the school and my grandfather's house, and he said that his son came home and told him, there's a young black teacher at our school now, and he works in the playground after school. So Mr. Hall came over to Cleveland to the playground, and he said to my dad, "If you can teach him, I can feed him." And Mr. Hall said to me, "Look what we did together, me and your father." And he's a lawyer and the prosecutor of East Orange, and there's a whole bunch of those guys, the ball players, and he's a short guy, but he could play some ball. Yes, he could play some ball, let me tell you. And so now there's a bunch of them, and that's another part of my childhood, when all the basketball players of Newark, and we had some great ones in Newark, used to come to our house on the weekends. Daddy and mommy would go get them, and mommy would cook hamburgers and hot dogs and stuff, and they would play records down in the basement of our house. And as a lot of them went off to college, a highlight of that was watching George Reynolds, who was on one of the best teams out of Newark, high school teams, went to University of Houston. And he was on the team with Elvin Hayes and Don Chaney when they snapped the 88 game winning streak of UCLA. Was John Wooden was the coach. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the center. Lucius Allen, Mike Warren. They had a thing going. John Wooden is considered one of the best coaches ever. And George was on the point guard on that team that snapped the winning streak. Okay, guys, I am. You see, I got. Oh Lord, we were a mess. We ran all over the place. And we watched that game from our basement. And my dad and Arthur Coles were down in Houston with George for that game, and we watched it on TV. And actually, that game is called the Game of the Century because that really ignited what's known today as March Madness. That was one of the most watched games of all time in the 60s, and it grew into March Madness, and that's what made college basketball, so exciting. Is that that game was one of the games that made college basketball very popular. So if you ever see the Game of the Century is a documentary, look for George Reynolds, number 42, point guard from Newark, New Jersey. Yes. Okay. So guys, I want you to have a good week, and I'll see you on Thursday. And everything's going good with Mary Kay Smooth and Tanisha Tight. Oh, don't forget about my Tanisha. Onaji Hair Studio. That's her salon she owns on 1555 Springfield Avenue in Maplewood. Have a good one. Love you.